The back room of Burke's saloon reeked of whiskey, sweat, and fear. The place felt suffocating, as if the wood itself had soaked up every sin that had ever been committed within its walls. The flickering lamp on the crooked table cast long, distorted shadows that made the room feel smaller than it was. May's wrists were bound tight with coarse rope, each fiber digging deep into her raw skin. Every time she moved, it tore a little more, the pain sharp, hot, and constant. She tried to still herself, tried not to show weakness, but her breath came uneven, shallow. She was trembling, though she fought to keep her chin raised. Beside her crouched Lily, smaller, younger, shaking so badly she could hardly breathe. Her face was pale, her eyes wide, her lips moving without sound, as if praying to a god she wasn't sure still listened. She was only 21, too young for the darkness that surrounded them, too young to face the kind of decision that was being forced upon her sister now. Burke towered over them, casting a shadow that seemed larger than life. His bulk filled the room, his cruel smile twisting into something monstrous. His breath was sour with liquor, and his eyes glittered with the pleasure of power. He enjoyed this, the control, the fear, the way they shrank back even before he touched them. In the corner leaned Sykes, his wiry frame resting against the wall, a knife dancing between his fingers as though it were nothing but a toy. His grin was wide and eager, like a wolf waiting for the command to tear flesh. 2 men. 2 shadows. No escape. Burke's voice was a low growl that seemed to shake the floor. "You can't pay me in coin," he said. "Then you'll pay me in flesh." May's heart hammered against her ribs. Her mouth was dry, lips cracked from the slap he'd already delivered. A thin line of blood clung to the corner of her mouth. She turned her head, and in Lily's terrified eyes she saw a reflection of her own fear multiplied. Pleading, begging, desperate eyes. Burke reached down and yanked May to her feet by the arm. His grip was iron, bruising, and his face came close, hot breath pressing against her cheek. "You or her," he said, his tone almost casual, though the cruelty in it was sharp as a blade. His other hand traced the rope binding Lily's arm. Lily whimpered, a broken sound that pierced May's heart like a nail. The sound was more than May could bear. It cracked what little resolve she had left. She closed her eyes, and in the darkness behind them she felt the weight of shame pressing down, crushing her chest. She forced her voice out, though it trembled and broke with every word. "I'll take it off. Please, just let her go." The words dropped heavy into the room. She wasn't naked, not yet, but inside she was already stripped bare. Pride gone, dignity gone. She had offered her body, her soul, everything, just to protect the only family she had left. Lily cried out, straining against the ropes. "No! Don't, please, somebody help us." Her voice cracked, echoing through the thin wooden walls of the saloon. Out front, Jack Colton heard it. He had come for nothing more than tobacco and a quiet drink. A man who kept to himself, gray at the temples, shoulders bent from years of hard ranch work. He'd grown used to silence, to loneliness. He carried it like a saddle too heavy to ever put down. But that cry, it wasn't just a sound. It was a wound ripped open. It was the echo of a night 10 years ago when his daughter had screamed like that. Before the bullet, before the grave. Jack set his glass down on the counter with a dull thud. He rose slowly, boots heavy on the wooden floor. The piano player stopped mid-note. A couple of drunks at the bar glanced up nervously, sensing something shift in the air. Jack pushed through the door into the back room and stopped dead. May stood there, her shirt torn at the shoulder, her eyes shining with despair. Lily was tied and sobbing, her face twisted with terror. Burke loomed over them, hand clamped on May's arm. Sykes leaned forward, knife flashing in the dim light. The sight tilted the room for Jack. For a heartbeat, he wasn't in Burke's saloon. He was back in the nightmare of 10 years past when he'd been too late to save his daughter. His jaw tightened, his breath came hard. His fingers twitched near the revolver at his hip. Burke snarled, "This ain't your business, old man. Turn around." Jack didn't move. His eyes locked on May's. He read the silent plea there, the desperation of a woman ready to sacrifice herself to protect her sister. The room seemed to hold its breath. Jack's heart pounded like a drum. He had sworn never again to draw, never again to kill, but here it was, the same choice, staring him down. Would he walk away and let history repeat itself? Or would he act even if it meant shattering his vow? Burke's grin widened when Jack didn't speak. "You heard me. Walk away." Jack's hand slid closer to his revolver. Years of rust in his soul cracked just a little. Burke barked a laugh. This one already offered herself. Said she'd strip. Brave sister she is. Maybe I'll take the younger one after just to be fair. Lily cried out, her voice breaking. Please, mister. Don't let him. That cry snapped something inside Jack. In one smooth motion, his revolver cleared the holster. The steel gleamed under the lamplight. The sound of the hammer being cocked was louder than thunder. Sykes froze, knife half raised. Burke's grin faltered, his bravado crumbling as his eyes met the cold steel stare of Jack Colton. Untie them, Jack said. His voice was low, steady. It wasn't a request. It was law. Burke hesitated, sweat glistening on his brow. He glanced at Jack's revolver, then at the sisters. He remembered the stories. Folks still whispered about Jack Colton, the old soldier who never missed. Burke cursed under his breath and yanked the ropes loose. Sykes let his knife clatter to the floor, backing away like a cornered rat. May stumbled forward, knees weak. She threw her arms around Lily and the two clung together, shaking, tears streaming down their dirt-streaked faces. For the first time that night, they felt a sliver of hope. Jack kept the revolver steady, his gaze never wavering. He knew men like Burke only understood steel and resolve. Finally, he spoke again, his tone colder than winter. Get out. Burke spat on the floor, humiliated, but he backed toward the door. Sykes slunk after him. At the threshold, Burke turned, eyes blazing. This ain't over. You'll pay for this, old man. The door slammed behind them, the sound echoing like a warning shot. Silence returned to the room. May turned to Jack, her voice breaking. Why would you help us? You don't even know us. Jack holstered his gun. His eyes were heavy with memories he could never bury. He muttered, almost too soft to hear. Because someone should have helped my daughter. And nobody did? May blinked, speechless. Lily clung tighter to her, whispering, Are we safe now? Jack's gaze hardened again. Safe? Not even close. Burke's a coward, but a coward with power. Men like that never let go. He walked them out of the saloon. The night was heavy and still, shadows stretching long across the dirt. The sisters held each other as though letting go would mean falling back into hell. Jack walked beside them, boots crunching on gravel, eyes scanning every shadow. At the edge of town, his horse waited, tied to a post. Jack lifted Lily onto the saddle, then May. You didn't have to save us, May whispered. Now Burke will come for you too. Jack shook his head. Worse men than Burke have come for me, and I'm still here. His voice carried the weight of scars, of storms weathered, of losses endured. But deep down, Jack knew this storm was only beginning. When they reached his ranch, the place looked worn, tired. But it was shelter. A lantern glowed on the porch, throwing long shadows across the dry yard. Inside, Jack poured water into tin cups, set out bread. The sisters ate in silence, hunger consuming words. Jack sat across the table, watching, haunted by memories of his daughter at that same table years ago. At last, May spoke. What will happen when Burke comes back? Jack leaned back in his chair, eyes narrowing. He will come. He's too proud to let this go. He met her eyes. But when he does, he'll find he's not the only one ready. Lily gripped her cup with both hands, voice unsteady. You're just one man. You can't fight them all. Jack gave a dry, gravelly chuckle. One man with a steady hand and a clear conscience can be enough. The sisters exchanged a glance. For the first time since the nightmare began, a flicker of trust passed between them. The wind rattled the shutters. A coyote howled in the distance. The world felt as if it were holding its breath. Why us? May asked quietly. You don't even know us. Why risk everything? Jack stared into the lantern flame, voice low but firm. Because too many times I stayed silent, and people I loved paid the price. Not again. The room fell silent, a silence that lingered, heavy and unshakable. Dawn broke over the plains with a brittle stillness. The horizon glowed faintly gold, but the air carried no warmth, only the cold bite of what was coming. Jack stood on the porch of his ranch, his coffee untouched, his eyes fixed on the dirt road that led back to town. He didn't need a clock to know the hour. Burke would come. Men like him always did. Inside, May and Lily were stirring. They had slept little, their nerves frayed, haunted by the echoes of the night before. When May came out to the porch, Jack barely moved. She wrapped a shawl around her shoulders and asked the question already hanging in the air. "Do you think he'll come today?" Jack's jaw flexed. He didn't answer right away. He had the look of a man listening to something beyond the wind, as if the land itself was whispering the truth. Finally, he spoke, low and certain. "Burke can't stand humiliation. A man like him powers all he's got. He'll come before sundown." Lily appeared in the doorway, clutching her arms tight against her chest. "And if he doesn't come alone?" she asked. Jack's eyes flicked toward her. "He won't. He'll bring the deputy, maybe more. That badge has been his shield for years. Makes his crimes look like law." The sisters exchanged a glance. Whatever safety they had felt last night was thin and temporary. Later that morning, Jack saddled his horse. The creak of the leather sounded like a prelude to something inevitable. He pulled on his hat, his shadow stretching long in the pale light. "Lock the doors," he told them. "If there's trouble, hide in the cellar. Don't come out unless I tell you." "Where are you going?" May asked. Jack adjusted the strap across his chest, the butt of his rifle visible at his side. "Town," he said simply. The saloon buzzed with low chatter when Jack walked in. He didn't need to look far. At the back table sat Burke, his bruiser Sykes, and Deputy Crow, the man with the badge but none of the honor. Their laughter cut through the smoky air, cruel and sharp. Burke noticed Jack first. His smile twisted into something ugly. "Well, well," the old ghost walks in. "Thought you'd be on your knees begging me to forget what you did." Jack didn't sit. He stood tall, the room suddenly quieter around him. Every eye turned. "The girls are free," he said evenly. "They don't owe you, not in coin, not in flesh. This ends now." Crow leaned back in his chair, the tin star on his chest catching the lamplight. His grin was thin as paper. "You got a short memory, Colton. Law says they're his debtors. Law says you're interfering, and I'm the law." Jack's gaze shifted to the deputy. His words came out like iron. "No, you're a man with a badge. But law is justice. And justice don't live here anymore." The saloon went silent. Glasses were set down. Cards forgotten. Men looked at each other, nervous, some ashamed. They'd all seen Burke's cruelty, Crow's corruption, but until now no one had stood tall enough to name it aloud. Burke slammed his hand on the table, rattling bottles. "You got a death wish, old man?" Jack's hand hovered near his hip, though his voice stayed calm. "Only wish I got left is that this town remembers what it means to stand up." The tension snapped like a whip. The words were no longer just about him or the sisters. They were for everyone in that room, everyone who had ever bowed their head while Burke and Crow drained them of dignity. Burke spat on the floor. "Enjoy your last sunrise, Colton. Tonight I'll burn that ranch to the ground." Jack didn't flinch. He just turned, walked out, and left the weight of his words behind him. By midday, dust rose on the horizon. A line of riders came, Burke in front, Crow at his side, Sykes grinning like a jackal. The others were hired guns, their faces hard and hungry. The sound of hooves was a drumbeat of war. Jack waited on the porch, rifle in hand, revolver at his hip. The sisters watched from the window, their breath fogging the glass. Burke reined in, his horse kicking up dirt. He pointed at Jack with a sneer. "Step aside, old man. Hand over the girls." Jack leveled the rifle, voice steady as stone. "They're not yours. They never were. Turn back while you still can." Crow barked a laugh, flashing his badge. "You gonna shoot the law?" Jack's eyes didn't waver. Law without justice is just a thief with paperwork. The crowd was gathering now, townsfolk drawn by the noise. Men, women, children stood at a distance, watching, whispering. Some looked afraid, others angry. Burke saw them, and for the first time, doubt flickered in his eyes. The control he had always enjoyed was slipping. He could feel it. May suddenly stepped out onto the porch, her hands trembling but her voice clear. "Burke," she shouted. "You think we're the first? You think no one remembers what you've done? How many families have you broken? How many lives ruined?" Her words cut through the silence. Lily joined her, her voice shaking but strong. "We're not afraid of you anymore." The crowd stirred. Murmurs turned into voices. A farmer shouted, "She's right!" Another woman cried, "We all know what you've done." Burke's face twisted in rage. He drew his pistol. "Enough!" He never finished. Jack's rifle cracked like thunder. The bullet struck the dirt inches from Burke's horse, sending the animal rearing. Burke clung to the reins, his face pale with shock. "Next shot won't miss," Jack said coldly. Crow's hand hovered near his own weapon, but when he looked at the crowd, he froze. The people weren't afraid anymore. They were angry, at him, at Burke, at years of silence. The tide had turned. Men surged forward. Hands grabbed Crow, tore the badge from his chest. Others pulled Burke from his horse, fists flying, voices shouting. Sykes tried to run, but a boot caught him square in the chest, sending him sprawling. It was over as quickly as it began. Burke and his men were tied, dragged toward town jail. Crow begged, his voice thin, but no one listened. Jack lowered his rifle, his shoulders heavy, his breath ragged. The fight had cost him nothing more than resolve, but it felt like it had taken years from his body. May touched his arm softly. "You did it," she whispered. Jack shook his head. "No, we did it. Took all of us standing." The crowd began to disperse, whispers turning into plans. Plans for trials, for rebuilding, for living without fear. As the sun dipped low, Jack sat on the porch with May and Lily beside him. The land stretched quiet and endless, the first stars appearing above. Lily leaned against her sister, her voice soft. "Are we safe now?" Jack watched the horizon, his eyes far away. "Safe? For now. But there'll always be another Burke somewhere. That's the world." May looked at him, puzzled. "Then why fight?" Jack finally turned to her, his expression gentle but firm. "Because courage ain't about winning. It's about standing up when others can't. That's how you make the world less cruel, even if only for a while." The sisters sat in silence, letting his words settle. "And that, friend, is the truth buried in the dust of the West. A man may be broken, scarred, haunted, but if he chooses to rise when it matters, he can turn the tide of an entire town. So I'll ask you, if you'd been there on that porch, would you have stood with Jack? Or would you have kept your head down and hoped someone else would? Those are the questions worth carrying long after the gunsmoke clears."